I'm going to go over a little bit about what we're going to do in the next hour. I'm going to talk very, very briefly and really let the focus of this hour be really about what the other session participants have been doing and how they've been using metrics. Where's the clicker?
I gotcha.
There we go. There we go. Is it working?
You gotta hit it twice.
Probably.
Nice. How does that make sense? Fix it. Is it too far? Yeah, way too far. Okay. There we go.
Technical difficulties, y'all.
Sorry.
Bear with us.
It's okay. I may or may not have spilled water on myself. So this is who we are. I'm going to start off. I work at American Press Institute. I'm their director of reader revenue. I've been there for less than a year. One of the things that API has been expanding on as far as its area of focus is on reader revenue, which is where I kind of came in after being on the publisher side for a number of years. And API is also known, and I was in a session earlier today, and they were talking about their metrics program, which is our metrics program, and since we are in a session called metrics, who has it? Click over. One more. So we are actually launching another version of metrics for news. For those of you that have it, for those of you that don't, it will be kind of more dashboards that will be better, and they've been, and if anybody has any interest in that or questions, and you can't find the two people that are here in the sea of 3,000 to get information, let me know, and I'm happy to put you in touch with them. So for us, anyone else hear that?
Okay.
For us today, I think as we think about what's happening in journalism now and think about what is needing to sustain it, and we kind of go from a situation where we're going from page views and scale to individual relationships. So often when I talk about this, I kind of equate it to a long-term relationship. You know, we're not dating anymore. We're going to move in and meet each other's parents and whatnot. Kind of having a more meaningful relationship. And sometimes when you hear people talking about the funnel and kind of moving people through that funnel, this kind of deepens the relationship. And one more. And that can be done with data and active listening, and that's kind of the focus of our session this afternoon is around what kind of data to use to make these decisions. The good news is kind of getting the newsroom from a cost center, which is always kind of has a bullseye on it, you know, with the times that we're living, to one that actually is the part that's generating content and building the relationships with the audience and the subscribers and leading to subscriptions and really understanding that. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Amanda.
All right, let's do it. I'm going to get out here because I think people want to wake up a little bit, and that way I can actually see the screen. Let's see if this actually works. So 4 weeks ago, I left my job as the #2 editor in sports, and I joined the digital product team. So I left the newsroom. So why did I do this? Because I actually want to help save the place. And I think that we can actually pull it off now. So, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, I was a very digital guy, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got a lot of page views for you. I can get a lot of people to cowboy stories. But I had really no way to actually get a monetization plan to say, hey, I'm worth it, and this is worth it for the company, and we're going to be solvent for 20 years. Well, now with digital subscriptions, we actually have a way. So let's talk about some definitions of things, because I'm going to use terms and I want everybody to know what the heck I'm talking about. So when we talk about a conversion, it's when someone subscribes to us. Someone actually initiates a successful process off this light box, and it can be a lot of things that you get them to convert on. We have 3 different subscription plans just for Dallas News. We also have a high school and a sports one, which we'll talk about. So what types of paywalls are out there? There's the hard paywall. You will never see our content unless you are a subscriber. Most of us are on metered paywalls. You get a certain number of stories before you get blocked, and then we ask you to pay. And then there's the freemium model, which I think a lot of the European papers, some of them are using. And I think that once we get the technology, that's the type of sort of paywall we're going to have, where the computer decides how many articles you get based upon your propensity pay and 2,000 different attributes of who you are. So I think that that's where we're going. So let's talk about how a meter works, because many of us are on there. That means that a user actually has to come to your website a lot. And for us, that seems to be a problem sometimes, because we get a lot of one-off traffic. So you got to get people to come to the site. Once is not enough. So here's the scary stat for you. And we got this from one of the tracking tools we use from Mather Economics. The most dedicated audience to our website, the top 2 or 3 or 4%, they come to us 9 days a month. That's it. That's not very good if we're selling a loyalty product. We've got to do better than that. We look at, we have access to some other metro papers, and they're not that much better or worse. We're all in the same boat. We have a lot of one-off users. We don't have these fans who come to us every day, who need us every day. They need to come to the site. So we're really going to talk about a metric today about returning visitors. And it's the best loyalty metric that we can find. We want people to come back to the site as many times. This is a stat from 2017. You know, the average person had to hit the light box 7 times before they actually subscribed. So not only do you have to get them to come to the site 3 or 4 or 5 times, after they hit it once, you're going to have to bring them back, and they're going to have to hit it 7 more times after that. So our job really becomes a little bit harder than we had expected. So let's talk about this stat. This is a fun one. This is called path to conversion. And let's say that you have a 30-day meter. And it's any article that the user viewed in the 30 days before subscribing. So if you click on an article, and then you click on another article, you click on Article A, you click on Article B, and you subscribe on Article C, is Article C the most important part of the subscription path? The answer is, we don't know for sure, but we don't think it is right now. So A and B could be just as important or even more important than Article C. Because often Article C is being based upon just a headline, because you're locked out of the content. So we're studying the articles on the consumer journey beforehand. And what we found is that topics and writers that usually are high in conversions are also high in path to conversions, and that they even out over time.
I'll tell you right now, this is a take a picture slide. Because
yeah.
this is, one of those things that we've done the study on this, and it's, it's an interesting number. I mean, you don't have to, but I'm just saying. It's sober.
Amanda's feeling.
It's sobering. Like, there's some numbers there that are a little sobering.
So we studied a bunch of articles in 2017 that we published. And here's what we realized. I don't know how many sports fans are in the room, but we hit a lot of singles and we don't hit a lot of home runs. And this is a problem for us. If you think that you're gonna solve all your problems with, the big home run article, it hasn't really panned out for us. And if we look at the other metropolitan papers that we've studied, it's the same way. So one of our top writers in total conversions gets a lot of subscriptions. Past year, the most number of subscriptions off a single article, 3. And we're seeing that a lot, is that you can't hit home runs. It's about this habitual content of bringing people back, and a lot of your articles have to get conversions because you're not going to get a lot of them with huge numbers. I think that they're outliers.
He asked if there were any similarities between those 13.
We're going to talk about one of them, but there's some investigative pieces in there, and there's the column after the Cowboys loss, and there's a random other viral story here, a viral story there. So, no. All right. So here's the scary slide for everybody. This is the slide that's going to scare everybody. The cool part about this is that for the first time ever, every journalist has a chance to directly track how much value they can provide to the organization. And it's scary. When I graduated and I went to a newspaper, the Detroit Free Press, I was so excited I got to write for the Free Press. How many people read your article, Mark? I have no clue. Then I got an Omniture report, and it said, oh, 4,000 people read your article. Congratulations. Well, how much is that in ad revenue? Not enough. Sorry. Okay, well now we have a metric that can do it. How many subscriptions do you really need to prove your value? And the good news is it's not that many. So let's say that you're going to charge $12 a month for mark.com. How many subscriptions do I need? The answer is not that many. So we're not targeting tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people. We may only need, on an individual basis, to target hundreds or in the low thousands. And if this is true, how the heck does it change our strategy? So, we're going to talk about some of the things that actually get subscriptions and some more interesting stats. So Amanda's going to give that to you.
So I'm feeling the Holy Spirit, so I'm going to come down and get the mic too. So. Thank you. You're gonna walk me through? All right, I'll do it. So for those of you who missed the intros, I'm Amanda. This is Mark. We work together at the Dallas Morning News. So we're tag teaming on these slides. So what gets conversions? We've studied a lot of the data, and this is what's working for us. Breaking news will convert. At least it does for us. I think there's a narrative out there that breaking news is like table stakes or whatever. You have to do it, but you're not going to get a lot out of it, right? We get a decent amount out of it. So breaking news and crime does convert for us. Real estate has been a huge conversion niche for us, one of our most valuable content areas in terms of conversions. Consumer-focused business news, retail, what grocery stores are opening up? People are insanely passionate about grocery stores. That's just a pro tip for y'all if you haven't figured it out. Cowboys and Rangers, no surprise. Pro sports, colleges, high school sports. We'll talk a little more about both colleges and high schools. There are some article types that are more likely to convert for us. Things that are a little more in-depth, they're forward-looking, analysis. Not just opinion content, but strong opinions. Hot takes, if you want to call it that. But strong opinions, have a take, those things will do well. Service journalism, that stuff will convert for us. So here's an interesting stat. For us, 18% of writers triggered half of the conversions. What happened to my other slide? Didn't we have another? Okay, well, all right. Oh yeah, this is it. Okay, so productivity is part of that. That's something that maybe not all your reporters are going to want to hear, but it does matter. So for us, of the 25 writers with the most conversions, 21 of those people were in the top 25 in number of posts published. We're talking about, feeding the beast, habitual behavior. They're providing the kind of coverage that people will come back to over and over and over again. It's why Cowboys works. It's why for us real estate works. We've got a real estate writer who's been doing it for 40 years, and he's so out of control that Mark knows this. He'll go on vacation and still file 4 stories while he's on PTO, and we're like, you can calm down for a minute, it's okay. But he knows that he needs to provide his audience with consistent habitual coverage. So what does not get conversions for us? Big surprise, international news. Now, when we do big readership studies, we hear things like, readers will tell us, I want more international news. None of our digital numbers bear that out in any meaningful way. So Mark and I are always pushing back when we hear those readership studies. Sports, there's some stuff that doesn't work for us from a conversion standpoint. National sports doesn't work for us at all. We have a WNBA team in town. People don't tend to convert for that stuff. Stuff that's not surprising to you probably. National opinion, a weak take. Nobody wants to read sort of a milquetoast like, I don't know, child molestation is bad. Yeah. Have a stronger, more interesting take. Or, an analytical, look at it. This sort of what I call your Metro cover feature, and I'm being hard on a lot of content here, and, good stories are good stories. I'll say that up front. But, when you're talking about sort of your Metro cover feature that's a slice of life thing, they're great to read in print. Digitally, it's just not something people will whip out a credit card for that we've seen. Standalone multimedia presentations. I think, probably there's a lot of outlets that succeed with those things. We're not one of them. And then there's a few business topics that don't really work for us. Now, as far as we did a bunch of studies, a bunch of data analysis of what converts. Length didn't really matter. There is sort of what would you call it, a valley in the middle mark of your sort of 800-word story. Yeah, pretty long will do pretty well, but short is fine too. Sometimes the stuff in the middle, it doesn't do as well, but there wasn't a strong enough correlation for length to really matter in our metrics. Who wrote it? Doesn't matter. Narrative format, how it's constructed, there's no correlation for us.
One thing about the byline, I will say, when I say byline, it's like comparing two people who writes about this topic similarly, but it doesn't necessarily relate to what they're doing to promote themselves. So if we sell a lot of subscriptions off Twitter, so someone who has a very passionate Twitter audience is going to get more conversions. Is that necessarily because of their byline? No, it's because of all the work that they're doing to promote themselves on social.
So here are a few surprises for us. We weren't sure. We didn't know whether it mattered, a staff writer versus a freelancer, and freelance content, can convert for us. I'm going to let Mark expand on this a little bit, experimenting with pay based on subscriptions. That's something that we're trying and is working in some ways. Do you want to get into that, or you want to get into that a little later?
No, well, yeah. So we made the first attempt this year to pay someone based upon the subscriptions that they sold. So we did it with a freelancer, and we're doing it with some other freelancers now, and it gives us a unique way to directly prove our value and the money that we spend on freelance money, that we can correlate it directly with an effect that we're going to make. Because what's the first thing that everyone cuts out of your budget? Freelance, right? It's a good way to get some of that money back.
If you can prove that content makes the company money.
It is. It's a fee per subscription based upon what we consider our lifetime value of a subscription at the same time, and so it's actually changed how much money we'll pay.
I got into this a little bit with real estate, but that sort of niche content can work from a subscription standpoint. And then, a surprising thing for us was what we talk about within ourselves internally about what's good, what's good work. And we've been really trying to trumpet things that get conversions as, trying to highlight those things as much as, sort of your more traditional, award-winning newspaper content. We're really trying to highlight what, this is content that's working, in a subscription world. So, okay. All right. One of the most important things that we learned is we went and looked at, what was that, 50 some odd thousand articles, Mark? And found two key metrics that that had the highest correlation to subscription conversions. And we felt it was really important to identify just a couple of metrics to keep it simple, and identify metrics that were easily surfaced by any journalist that works in our newsroom. So we didn't want it to necessarily be a metric that you can only find in Google Analytics, which like 3 people touch, and et cetera, et cetera. So we use Parsley. Our whole newsroom is engaged in Parsley. That everybody, looks at their numbers kind of obsessively. We found that returning page views, so page views by returning visitors, and total engaged minutes, which is a sort of blended metric of time spent multiplied by visitors to an article. Those things are that correlated the most significantly to subscription conversions. So these are the only 2 metrics really that we talk about in depth with individual reporters. These are the numbers that they have goals around, and this is what they're really looking at every day. We shifted it to return visitors because it's more easily surfaced in Parsley, but they're very close. So here's another kind of just an interesting big number. We were able to find through that study sort of a threshold for even having a chance of getting a subscription. For us, it's 3,000 page views. 81% of articles with more than one conversion hit that 3,000 page view level. Here's the horrible slide. Only 26% of our content hits that threshold. We're just going to be brutally honest here about what we're learning and what we're seeing. And so our challenge is to raise that number. And everybody sort of knows that that's an important number. And they also know that only a quarter of our content hits it. So it's a scary thing for people to see, but we feel like it's important for them to understand that. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to talk about some of our niche work. We're just like tag team evangelical preaching right now. It's fine.
Right. So when we studied those 54,000 articles, we definitely found that traffic mattered in a lot of cases. I would say I call it like a 2/3 rule. For 2/3 of the content, the traffic mattered. You needed to get enough people to hit that meter to have a chance. And then there's a couple cases where, just throw all your analytics out the door. So let's talk about that. So SMU football. SMU is a smaller Division I program in Dallas, and we cover 8 college teams in Dallas. And if we were in a page view environment, I would say, why even bother? And then we got to a subscription environment. And for SMU, we found that we were the only ones that were covering it. And we didn't have a lot of competition, and so we covered the heck out of it. And it turns out we were able to sell more conversions than any of the other colleges, and it became one of the top beats that we cover in conversions. And it's a very interesting case because the page views on SMU aren't very good. But we found the right in-between balance between not enough competition and people dying for the content. And there's going to be a lot of cases like this, and we have to figure them out. And right now, from a metric perspective, we probably know 5 to 10% of what we should know. So it'll be a goal for the next 4 or 5 years as we figure these things out to try to find what types of niches are we going to be able to succeed in, and how do we succeed in them. We succeeded in SMU just because we created the content. We got the school to share some of the stuff, but which helped. But really, it was create it, build it, and they will come. What happens when we actually put some marketing force behind something like this? What other niches could sprout out and sprout up because of this? Because again, you don't need 20,000 people to subscribe to a beat to be successful. All right, so let's talk about this. This is crazy. It's the craziest thing I've seen. So I knew high school football was big in Texas, but I didn't get it until this subscription strategy. So the Dallas Morning News, to my knowledge, has really the only, I think we're the only site with an actual high school subscription. So for between $5 and $8 a month, you can pay us and you will only get access to the high school content. And let me tell you, it's killing it. It's destroying our main website right now in subscriptions. It's destroying the Dallas Cowboys in subscriptions. So we've sold more high school subscriptions in September, October, and November than the rest of the site combined. Now, granted that they're at a lower rate. We also thought, oh, they're just coming for high school football. They'll leave. High schools had one of the lowest churn rates of any section that we've had. We're just starting year 2 of this process. Already, high school's off to a great start, and we raised the price. We also give high school coaches free access. So we've eliminated 4,000 to 5,000, 6,000 of the most diehard people who would be interested in the content, and we've eliminated them from being able to pay us. And we're still doing really well. It's free for high school coaches because they give us some of the content. Because we count on them to give us their rosters and give us roster updates and their schedules and their scores, stats, etc. We've also, really found that, we can deliver some of the watchdog-like and investigative journalism into high schools, and it will do well as well as just the regular stats and scores and schedules, and it's really, really cool. What does this mean? The answer is I don't know. But it could be really, really exciting for other types of niches and for other types of websites that are on a niche level. It gives everyone some hope. It gives me hope that high school stuff didn't get a lot of page views necessarily. You couldn't count on a high school article to get you 10,000 page views like any old Cowboys article could for us. But it's all behind a meter. Yes, it's all metered. Amanda, you want to talk about paywalls?
Yeah, I'll just use this. I'm not going to get up again for one slide. So, Mark talked a little bit earlier about we're hitting a lot of singles. We don't hit a lot of home runs. This is, if you're a sports person, we hit for the cycle on this one. So this is a big sort of flagship investigative service journalism piece that we had 2 people working for a solid, 18 months on? I have the benefit of our editor, Mike Wilson, is here, and I can look at him right in the face and ask a question. So this series of articles generated more than 100 conversions, and this was like a humongous learning moment for us because those are conversion numbers we had never seen before, and not only that, this was after we stopped offering 99-cent trials. It's one thing to get 100 conversions on sort of a single story that people want to read if you're talking about a very low price point, but we had shifted to a much different looking pricing model when we released this series. And kind of like Mark just said with high schools, what did we learn? I'm not entirely sure because this might be a once in a lifetime project just from a success standpoint. I mean, we were going to do this story no matter what. Incredibly important for people in Texas who are getting left behind in healthcare and who are literally dying because they're not getting the care that they need, the help that they need. But I don't know that we could have predicted anything like that success. Mike, do you think it was going to get 100 conversions? I knew. And this is why he's in charge, y'all. No, but this was an exciting thing for us to see that big capital J important journalism that can change the lives of your constituents, can also sell subscriptions. That was very exciting for our newsroom. And I'm going to give it back to Mark.
All right. So I got to put on my digital marketing hat now because I'm now on the evil team and I'm no longer in the newsroom, even though I work closely with the newsroom. So one of the first things that I got to see in my new job is I got to see every single reason why someone unsubscribes. So I got to see it for print, and I got to see it for digital. And it's very, very interesting. I know exactly why people unsubscribe in print, and they're different. Why don't people subscribe, and why do people unsubscribe in digital? I don't use it often enough or need it. Boy, is that a blow. Wow. Guess what? That's not one of the reasons why people are leaving print. This is a direct shot at us. Then there's the good enough principle. Oh, I can get my news from the TV station website. That's good enough for me. I don't need anything else. I can go to the free Bleacher Report blog run by $1,000 a month bloggers. I don't need your 4 Cowboys writers and you spending $50,000 to go to every single game for the season. Don't need that. And I don't want to pay for news. I can't solve that yet. The culture's going to change. But those are the 3 reasons why we've seen churn on digital subscriptions. So who likes funnels? Because you're going to see this forever. Oh my gosh, it's funnel. This was Robin Tomlin, who is now in Raleigh. She introduced me to the funnel, and boy, it's been a great relationship. So here's what you have to think about the funnel. What are you doing as a journalist to bring engagement at all levels? How are you bringing people in who don't know what your product is and don't know what you're about and don't know why you're important and think you're fake news? How do you get those people to start reading? Then how do you get people to keep reading? Then how do you get them to subscribe? Oh, and then once they subscribe, you better keep them happy or they're going to churn. And many of our newspapers are struggling with 50 to 60 to 70% churn rates. Those 99-cent trials, the churn rates are awful. So what are we going to do? We have to do a lot of this. So maybe we'll have another session about just the funnel. But this is just a little taste. So what can help? Well, the first thing that I'm working on as a digital product guy is newsletters. If we have a problem that people aren't using it, well, then maybe we should send them an email to frickin' remind them that we exist. Because if I post something on Facebook, no one sees it anymore. And if I post on Twitter, they think it's fake news. So I'm kind of in a bind here of what we can do. So, Boston is a great example of using newsletters to just kill it. They've been doing it for 6 years. They send 1 billion emails. They spend a lot of money on it, and they've been really successful. And if we can steal part of that strategy, that's our hope. Headlines. So I always like to tell my newsroom, if you worked for weeks on a story and you didn't write a good headline, why did you waste your time? And it sucks to have to say that. It's a reason why when I write a story, on the very few times I write a story, I let someone write the headline for me, because they will write a better headline than I will, and they will write something that people will want to click on.
Sometimes that's me that does that.
Yes, especially the MMA ones. So far, we don't know where Facebook is going. Right now, one of the interesting things is I believe that our traffic for Facebook and Twitter, it's like 5 to 1, 6 to 1, something like that, Facebook, right? Advantage Facebook and traffic. In subscriptions, it's 2 to 1 Twitter. I think it's very biased by sports. I think real estate and some local crime and breaking news helps. I'm interested to see weather. Weather is one of the niche beats we're trying right now.
And it's worth pointing out that we are in Facebook Instant Articles, which on mobile you're not going to get metered. So that is certainly probably impacting a little bit of that imbalance, but it's not, I think, terribly surprising, just given the sort of loyalty. Twitter is a news junkie kind of place. It's sports kind of place. So it's still a worthwhile stat, even though it's a little bit juiced.
So let's talk about impact and how, some other tactics that might be able to lead to subscribers. I'm going to turn it over to Peyton.
Hey. Oh. You want the mic? No, I'm good here. You're good here. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to talk about very different things, metrics related. but it's also about measuring our success and let this guide our editorial and marketing strategy. So I'll talk about how collecting and reporting the impact of journalism, or impact for short, can lead to more trust and subscribers in the process. So I'm leading a thing called Impacto in Brazil. We started a year and a half ago with 11 partners, with 5 partners, and now we have 11. They all range from startups to big newsrooms like Folha de São Paulo, which is the largest newspaper, and Veja, which is the largest magazine. We started with a small grant from Google News Initiative, and then a year ago we got help from ICFJ. I am an ICFJ Knight Fellow now, which helped me a lot in this. So I'm going to talk about specifically the experience in 4 newspapers in Brazil: Folha de São Paulo, and Gazeta do Povo, Correio, and Gazeta Online. They are 3 local newspapers or regional newspapers. I think this experience might be interesting to many of you here. The hypothesis that we are testing at Impacto is that in times of decreasing trust in media, news organizations need to get better at communicating the value of their work, their impact. The idea that everyone knows that we are important, I think we should spend some more time on it. And right now, we are mostly selling, if you go to a subscription page in most newspapers, not only here in the US, but everywhere, we are basically selling convenience. Pay us and we won't bother you with paywalls any longer. So this is an example of the subscription page of the LA Times, but you can see that anywhere. But if you go to journalism nonprofits, of course, it's different. They are not asking for subscription, but donations. But if you read what they are not offering access to information. They are saying, support fearless journalism, join over 30,000 fellow and help us investigate this and that. And the other one, support investigative journalism. Our reporters are truth seekers and storytellers and whatnot. So they are selling different things. And I think this is starting to change, and I noticed a couple of years ago something happened here. I'm not sure what, but I think some of the stuff impacted how journalism sells itself. If you go to the subscription page in the New York Times, they're no longer selling just access. They're asking for support. If you go to The Guardian, is why subscribe? Support The Guardian's journalism. We invest our money, etc. So they're kind of taking a clue from the nonprofits, and of course there's the idea of democracy dies in darkness, which is kind of stark, but it's the same thing. We want you to pay for us to do our job, otherwise democracy will die. And I think what people are realizing is that we should not take the value of journalism for granted, especially for regular people. And I think we have to make a better case when we are asking for support, when it's easier for the Times or the Post to ask for support over their great stories and the Pulitzer Prize winning stories. But for regular newsrooms, I think we should make a better case of why we should be asking for their money. And we are, at Impacto in Brazil, we are helping in many different ways to automate this impact collection, creating workflows for better impact reporting. When I say impact, I mean a lot of different things. It means different things to different newsrooms. It goes from uncovering a corruption scandal and ousting an official to just pointing out there's a failing light in your street, and then the city goes and fix it. And we're helping them generating reports and connecting all of this to subscriber acquisition and retention. I'm going to focus on this last 2 pieces here in this panel. And I'm going to start with the step 3 of what we do. We do impact reports. It will all make sense in a bit. I worked here in the US a couple of years ago with the Marshall Project, which is a wonderful nonprofit. And they do annual reports, as every nonprofit does. And I thought about doing the same annual impact report for a newspaper there, Gazeta do Povo. And you can, there is a link, you can go, there's a page with all the impacts that they managed to report last year. And they start this report with a figure, 16 million reais, which is roughly $4 million, which is the amount of money that the city or the state got back because of a corruption scandal that wasn't covered through stories, through an investigation of Gazeta do Povo. So they're basically saying every $9.99 that you gave us helped the city save this amount of money. So we started this report saying this is the value, this is how you're investing your money and how we are giving it back. We also noticed how many times people in the Congress cited stories from Gazeta do Povo in their big discussions on public policy, meaning that it's not only about page views, but there is important people reading the stories, and this is influencing the public debate. And we also did a small map, that every point on the map is a small impact, saying that, like those examples that I say, like fix the lights, or some reader called the newsroom saying that something happened after the story was published. We plotted all of this in a map, and so the reader can take a look at, and when the small impacts are, it seems they are not big enough when taken individually, but when you put everything together, you can see the impact of a newspaper in a community. So how can we go from the idea of putting impact reporting into your strategy into actually generating this report, this step 3? You have to first collect the impacts, which is, we can be a simple thing, like create a simple Google form, a type form, pass around the newsroom, and say every time someone in the newsroom noticed that something happened, so a source calls or send an email saying that something happened, you could just write in a type form. The shorter the better. You don't want to add additional things for the reporters. You could monitor social media and government websites. We at Impacto, we scrape a lot of government websites, so anytime a congressman talks about Gazeta do Povo in Congress, we know because we keep tab of every transcript that is talking. We scrape media websites, so we automate a lot of this impact collection, and we offer in a dashboard that I can show whoever is curious. The second one is getting the newsroom involved. Of course, you're just saying, now we are going to collect impact. It's hard enough to say, now we are going to track conversions or page views or social media, whatever. So we are adding a new thing. But to do that, we have to make clear to them that we are doing this because we think that we will help, in the end, our business model. And we also do, at Impacto, we give reporters more insight. Every time that they record an impact, they fill out that form, they receive an email with the whole newsroom, or sometimes the whole desk receives the email about the impact, the new impact, that there is a Slack channel alert. And the person that records the impact receives an email like this showing how the story is doing on social media. So we're giving a hint of regular metrics to them. We also give prizes, once a month, every reporter in the newsroom vote into the best impact at Gazeta do Povo and Correio da Bahia. Basically, we give a simple thing, a symbolic thing, a $55 Amazon gift card to the person with the best impact. And we see that there's even a ceremony at Gazeta, which is fine. It's people acknowledging stuff that goes beyond the regular metrics. And the step 4, which is the selling all of this. We are collecting, we are making some of the reports, but now we want to connect all of this to actually improving our bottom line. We're selling the idea of impact, and we're chasing different strategies. And I hope that I could receive some of the results, but we are doing this right now, and probably in the future, maybe next year's ONA, I will give you some of the results. But basically, Gazeta do Povo, they are testing talking about impact on subscriber retention. So if a reader calls Gazeta and wants to cancel its subscription, the person now, the menu that the person would say from the call center, they usually go offering a lower rate or a membership or something, but now they will talk about impact, specifically the impact in their neighborhood. At Correio da Bahia, they are doing a paywall pop-up that will mix some impacts. It's not only, no, we're bugging you with this paywall, but now you should subscribe not only because of this, but also because Correio did this to the city of Salvador. At Gazeta Online, we're A/B testing subscription pages, including information on impact on some of them and not in the others. And at Papo de Homem, which is a startup that I didn't talk about in the beginning, we are using the data that we collected through Impacto, specifically comments. If you can believe, there are places in the internet with great comments. And at Papo de Homem specifically, we collected 230,000 comments, and there are a number of them of people thanking or saying, "That's cool, I should try this," or reporting back with results. So the idea is that we're collecting all these comments, which are small impacts, and we are going to say that Papo de Homem impacted in a positive way the lives of X number of people. So we're going to try all these different strategies. And the most important thing, I mean, there are different strategies and different tools for everyone, but I just wanted to give you this quick glimpse for you to have this in your arsenal of your tools. Not only talk about there's metrics and conversions, there are sophisticated ways of measuring all of this, but you can also think about it in a more philosophical way about the impact of journalism.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yep. No, not from you. Sorry, Ken.
Okay. Well,
I was going to make a slightly more formal announcement and say that in the middle of the room, there is a microphone if people are interested in asking questions. I know my brain is definitely full. It was a lot of really interesting and valuable information, but I do welcome questions from the audience. Yes, Ken, what's your question?
Yeah, Ken Sands from the Chronicle of Higher Education. I wanted to ask about churn rates, specifically with our Dallas friends here. And there was a slide about high school sports, and I suppose it applies to SMU football as well, that exclusivity and passion is more valuable than mass appeal. And in my experience, mass appeal is almost by definition not something people would pay for. So I wonder if the niche areas is where you're seeing renewals, and these broad mass appeal stories is where you're getting the churn. And I wonder if you've studied that.
Well, we're still seeing great results from some of the things that you would consider mass appeal. The crime, the breaking news, the Dallas Cowboys. We're still selling a lot of subscriptions, so it's both. As far as the churn rates related to just those, you're right. On the niche ones, the churn rates are better. But we're selling so many subscriptions off those other things that we wouldn't necessarily take those away, even if the churn is a little bit higher in that.
But couldn't you do other things that are more niches instead of that and keep?
We're going to try. I think we got Nicole and Mike here, and I think we're trying like 2 or 3 more niches this year. Like I think like I said, the next niche for us is weather. So we actually have someone now assigned just to do weather.
Yeah, doubling down on niches was a big takeaway for us.
That's one of like the key digital strategies for the newsroom.
Yep. Hey, we know this
We
guy.
don't want to answer your questions.
So I'm Mike Wilson from the Dallas Morning News, and I have a comment and a question. First of all, great presentation. The comment is that, at the Dallas Morning News, there is a broad understanding that we need to give readers the information they want because reader revenue is going to be our future. And so everybody's on board with that. But it's important to understand that we do not have financial incentives for any journalist in the newsroom to achieve a certain number of subscriptions. And conversions and audience is just one of the ways in which people are evaluated. And my question is for Mark and Amanda, do you think that was a good thing for me to tell everybody?
Yes. Much appreciated.
I'm glad he cleared it up, because that was my question, was exactly who do you credit the story to if you're giving bonuses based on subscription conversion?
Doing freelancers right now.
I
So
see. But I mean, are you crediting just because of their story, or are they part of that chain, that funnel that you were talking about?
they can be part of the path as well.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And I will say that, you know, we didn't give individual reporters conversion-based goals because they can fluctuate pretty hard. You know, we change a meter setting and it impacts all of your goals. It definitely impacted the goals we set around returning visitors and total engaged minutes. You make one little tweak to how the meter is served and those things kind of blow up. So that is, you know, we talked a lot about what we're doing, but that's also like I don't know if I'd call it a mistake, but something we learned of like, okay, you know, we set these goals for folks and then sort of the goalposts moved, and that can be a really challenging morale thing. So we were very transparent, addressed it with the newsroom, restated the goals. Like, it's just something we didn't anticipate, but it's, you know, if you're gonna go into this, be very aware, you know, eyes wide open about the things that you can't control. And, you know, the newsroom can't control how we're going to move that meter around, and it can impact your metrics very significantly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Tahi Chappelle. I'm an engagement editor for Philly.com, Philadelphia Inquirer, and Philly Daily News. I got here a little bit late, so I apologize if this might have been already addressed. But at what point do you see, in terms of looking at like niche coverage, a trend that says, hey, we should put more resources behind this starting now versus letting a trend kind of, you know, get longer and then you're like, oh, let's hop on it now? At what point are you, what metrics, what indications are you looking at to say, hey, especially if you're looking for more niche topics now, what are you looking at early so you can hop on it and start resourcing it?
Well, I think we have an SMU full-time position that we created because of this. So we tried it on a freelance basis first. You know, I think that you can judge, as our metrics get better, you're going to be able to see what types of content based upon words in stories that have a propensity for people to subscribe. You know, as the metrics get better, you're gonna be able to see behaviors that can point you into that direction. Oh, when we post a breaking weather story, we posted, you know, 20 weather stories and they did better than when we posted 20 of these other types of stories. Maybe we want to invest in that. I think it requires a deep dive into analytics and behavior that maybe not all of us are into yet. It's also, you gotta get, you know, like anything, if you wanna write a big story in your newsroom, you wanna take a trip, you wanna go do an initiative, you're going to have to research it, build up a case, and, you know, this part of it gives you an extra little sliver of, it can also mean revenue to the company.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say we don't have any really sophisticated propensity modeling right now. But, you know, the things we are looking at are sort of, you know, like Mark's saying, that 3,000 threshold that I talked about, things that are, you know, that will convert at significantly lower than that threshold, or like, that's a real, you know, flag for us of like, okay, we need to put more resources here. The real estate stuff that I talked about, we have just added another full-time body onto real estate coverage that we moved from another area, you know, just to say, okay, what happens now if we go at this twice as hard? You know, it's our hypothesis that we'll, you know, hopefully double those conversions. And so, you know, those are the kinds of things we're looking at.
One thing to look at is a geographic basis too.
Yeah.
Or even a demographic basis, which I know, you know, some people are uncomfortable talking about, but so many people are seeing the news through their own demographic or geographic prism. And is that part of this niche coverage? I don't know the answer yet, but that's what we're trying to figure out.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annika Törnqvist from the Center of Suppressed Democrat. So I have two questions. So do you have a limit on how many stories do you give free, or do you do different ones for the niches and the rest of the content? And what tool are you using?
What tool we use for the
For the
meter?
paywall and for like the segmentation or the
We
target?
designed our own paywall. We left a different paywall provider that we used to have. As far as what we set the meter at, it's constantly changing, and it is different. So at various points, it's been different for people who are on sports versus who are on news, and it's different for people who are in our market or who are out of market.
So is it like 3 stories free or 10, or is it?
It can be,
everything?
it can be anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 days in a month. And I think that the experiments of these of the way that we're going to do meters, it's just going to continue. And I don't think that a one-size-fits-all approach works. But that's more of a product, a digital product strategy.
Our entertainment content is not metered at all, because it's really valuable to us from like an advertising inventory, perspective. It's sold out consistently, and so we're not really willing right now to, have negative page view impacts on them. So it varies all over our various digital properties.
So are you also giving away like breaking news if you have big, like we, for example, we gave our wildfire content away for free during the fires. Are you doing that too?
We will drop the paywall in big like news events that are a public safety issue. Like I saw a lot of the papers are doing it for hurricane coverage. We have done that when it's like an active shooter type situation. Yeah.
You're the last question.
I'm Adam Zimmerman from Chromatic. For your niche content, do you share any of that to other platforms from your web through like APIs or some other means, and do you have like, a platform dedicated to just this niche content?
No, it's on our CMS.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought, though. I mean, it's, something to think about, like, just experimentation-wise. But right now, it's basically just our sort of owned and operated properties plus, your typical distributed platforms. That's interesting. Always.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm Tom from San Diego. What's interesting when you do this is it's really different for every property, every geography. In LA, it's food, which would be surprising. It's not entertainment. In San Diego, it's investigative stuff. So as you go through your shop, you're going to find that your audience, your market is completely different, your expectations are different.
And it might change, like, next year. Like, those things can really fluctuate. I think if we had been doing this 4 years ago, we had like an aviation reporter who was a very feed the beast person. That's, we might be looking at something very different if we sort of had that person still doing that work in the same way. It's just, it can fluctuate for a lot of reasons.
All right, I want to be mindful of time. Thanks again for everyone for your questions and your attention, and thank you very much to Mark and Amanda and Pedro for your experience and information.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, we'll hang out for a bit if you want to chat.
So